Boker Tov, today's daf is daf Ayin Beis and Zbachim. So we learn for Chanukah basis for Shlema from Moshe Yaakov ben Chana Sheva. Now, yesterday we got down to near the bottom of Ayin Aleph Amid Beis, 2 lines from the bottom of the page there. The Gemara discussed, we saw in the Mishnah, that there are certain things, Isuri Hana, like a chatos hamesos, meaning a chatos that you have to let die. You can't have any hana from it. Can't do anything with it. You just have to lock it up and let it die. Or a shor niskal, a shor that was sentenced to death by the court. Also, you can't have any enough from it. You can't, let's say, shecht it and eat it. Can't have any enough from it. So we said that if they get mixed up with anything else, they are everything that they got mixed up with has to be destroyed. Has to be destroyed. Then we talked about things which are usher to the Beis Hamikdash. For example, let's say esnan zona mechir kelev, or an animal that bestiality was committed with, but there's no tuadim. In other words, these things are also for the Beis Hamikdash, but it's mutter for you to have enough from them. These things also, we said, what do you do with them if they got mixed up with kachim? So you can't actually use those animals. So there's solutions that the Mishnah gave about wait till they get a mum and then sell them and redeem, etc., etc. If what happens if kachim got mixed up with kachim, similar things like that. But in terms of the Isuri Hana, like Chatos Amesos and Shor Niskal, the Gemara went on to ask, well, don't we find this also in Masechtas Tamura, where we find the same Isser? Why is it brought down here again? So the Gemara said, okay, well, it's not everything that's listed here is not listed there, and everything that's not listed there is not, everything is listed there is not listed here, and that's why we need both of them. So the Gemara now says 2 lines from the bottom of Ayin Aleph and Beis, the Hedyo Nami Tanalei, even if we're not talking about Kachim, we're just talking about something which is Asr Bahana, right? You said, okay, there we're talking about Kachim, Mishna's Kachim, but Mishna's telling us Kachim, Mishna's telling us anything it's considered. But we already learned that also in Masechtas Avodah Zarah. Tehid Nami Tanalei, that what? That if Isuri Hana got mixed up with something of yours, you can't have any enough from any of it. The whole mixture. In other words, why are they a mixture? You can't tell one from another. You have to be. You can't have enough from any of it. The Mishnah says in Avodah Zarah, ve'ilu asurin ve'osim koshen. The following things are asur, and even any amount, even a small particle got mixed up with other stuff, can't have enough. What are they? Yayin nesach, wine that was used in Avodah Zarah libations, the Avodah Zarah itself, right? So we already know those things. It says Rashi in the bottom line on the page, the last line on the page, Nami, Tanam Sechta Avodah Zarah, di Surya lo batli beruba. In other words, not batal barov, mitzru lehedyo. Not only are we talking about like our Mishnah, well, if these things got mixed up with your carbon, what do you do? Well, you got to destroy them all. Okay, kachim, we might think kachim are holy. You can't take any chances. But even if we're not talking about kachim, your wine got mixed up one little vial of yayin nesach, or one bottle of wine of yayin nesach got mixed up with a whole cellar full of regular kosher wine. You know, very good wine. It's the whole thing is got to be destroyed. So what does it have to tell me that these things of Asr Ma'ana are also for you, even if it's not kachim? You can't sell it. You can't sell it because you're getting enough from it. Unless we said in certain cases you could sell it to a goy, excluding the value of that one bottle, right? That one bottle. If you have that option, sometimes you have that option, but Yain Nesach and Avodah Zarah, those things basically, if it's yours, you can't have any enough from it. So we already learned that in Masechtas Avodah Zarah. Says the Gemara at the top of Ayin Beis, Strichi. No, you need our Mishnah too. Why? Okay, I might think over there, it's also you shouldn't have enough from it. But if it's for the Beis Hamikdash, we don't want to lose the whole Beis Hamikdash. Let's say the Beis Hamikdash had barrels of wine or cellarfuls of wine. We don't want the Beis Hamikdash to lose so much. We have to be concerned about Hashem's treasure, so to speak. So that's why we say over there, if you'd only have the case on Avodah Zarah, we say maybe for a hedya, okay. If you're a private person and a bottle of Avodah Zarah wine, or Yain Nesach, or an Avodah Zarah somehow got mixed up, something was used for Avodah Zarah got mixed up with your stuff, there you have to destroy the whole thing. Aval L'Gvoa, But for the Beis Hamikdash, we don't want to make the Beis Hamikdash cause such a great loss. So therefore, I'm telling you, in our case, in our Mishnah tells us that even if any Isuri Hano, like Patos Amesos or Shor Niskal, got mixed up with an animal in the Beis Hamikdash, which was Kachim, you have to destroy them too. And if you only have a case of Yehavi Amina, Hanimili Kachim Demos. Oh, you can't have if an animal of Shor Niskal or an animal that's Chatos Amesos got mixed up with Kachim, with different Kachim animals. So there you say it got mixed up. You have to destroy them all because it's repulsive to bring a carbon that was a Shor Niskal or Chatos Amesos. There it's repulsive in the Beis Hamikdash because of its higher degree of sanctity. Aval Chulin de Lo Mos. But let's say got mixed up. Let's say one Shor Niskal or Chazma got mixed up with my personal farm. In my personal farm, my personal barn got mixed up with thousands of other animals. I might think that it should be batal. Emi Suri Hano Levatl Baruba. Even though I know I can't have enough from a Shor Niskal, or I can't have enough from a Chatos Amesos because that's Asur Ba'ano, but I might think that it should be Batal Barov. Okay, for the Beis Hamikdash, it's a higher degree of sanctity. We're not the Beis Hamikdash. We're not so holy, right? Maybe for regular people, it should be Batal. It should be neutralized in the Rov. Tzricha, therefore, we need both our Mishnah and the Mishnah in Tamura. Okay, and in Avodah Zarah. The other cases were cases in Tamura, called Shalom Mizbeach, Asur Mikol Shein, Arov V'Nivra, things from Mizbeach, and we said there. So we said before that if you case in Tamura, I might think that's only also Likvoa, Aval Hegyanei Malo, Kamash Malan, that things that are that Asur Ba'ano, you can't have an even for a Hegya. The Gemara said yesterday, but Hani, which are not Asur Ba'ano, like things which are Shasl Gavoa, I might think about Mashma that they're also. So you need both the Mishnayos in Tamura and the Mishnayos in Avodah Zarah. We need them all. But now the Gemara asks the basic question: why isn't it Batal Barov? Why do we say, oh, these things are not Batal? They're not neutralized. They're not nullified in a rov. Why not? Doesn't the pasuk say Acharei Rab Lahatos? We said many times if you have two against one, that's all you need. Now, Midrabanan, we say it's got to be Batal B'Shishim, no Saint Tam. If it gives a Tam, it's not Batal, and we judge that as Batal B'Shishim. What's the idea of Batal B'Shishim? That usually one part in 60 parts, the 60 parts overpowers it. You wouldn't taste unless it was very strong. If you could taste it even 1 in 60, so it's not Batal there too. But Mirat Torah, 2 against 1 is Batal. If you had 2 pieces of kosher meat, 1 piece of not kosher, they got mixed up. Mirat Torah, you could eat all 3. Now, there's exceptions. The rabbis made all kinds of exceptions. For example, the famous exception is or let's say this. Let's say when it comes to truma, we'll see that truma is 1 in 100 is batul. In other words, let's say I have some truma that I have to give to the kohen. I can't eat it. I could have enough from it. I could give it to my grandson, who's a kohen. I'm not a kohen. I can give it. Let's say I have a grandson who's a kohen. I can give it to him in lieu of something. You could have enough from it. You're not supposed to sell it to the kohen. You have to give it to a kohen. But I can give it. But you could have enough from it. All right. Or I could get tovas enough. For example, if let's say a grandfather of a kohen says, "I'll tell you what. You do me a favor. Give it to my grandson, and I'll do you a favor." So you're getting some enough. You could have enough, but you can't eat it. Can't eat truma. Let's say the truma got mixed up in a whole supply. A whole warehouse full of regular wheat. So is it batal? It's batal if it's 1 in 100. It's 1 in 100 parts is batal. It's learned out because trumas meiser. What is meiser? Meiser rishon is 10%, right? Well, you have your crops every year, whether it's the 5 grains, wheat, barley, oats, spelt, and rye, or wine or oil. You have to give truma and araisa on those cases, right? Minator, you have to give truma in those cases. Whether it applies today, different shiloh, but basically, Minator, you have to give Trumas Meiser. What is Truma? Truma is any amount. You can give even a small amount. Meiser is 10% of the whole thing. Now, what do you do with the Meiser? You give it to the Levi. What does the Levi do with it? He has to give 1/10 of it to the Kohen. Okay, so if you're giving 10% to the Levi, and he gives 10% of that to the Kohen, how much is the Kohen getting? 100th of the whole supply, right? Of the whole crop. Right? Because I'm giving him 10%, and the lady gives 10% to the Kohen, 10% of that. So that's 1%. So 1%, they learn from there that Truma is bottle 1 in 100, based on that idea, because it calls it kachim. Rashi brings down that drasha. Okay, so Truma is 1 in 100 is bottle. Klayim, and now Truma you could have enough from, but Klayim and Arla, you're not allowed to have enough from. Klayim is if you mix, let's say, vines with grains and mix things together. That's also, we know as Klai Karim. And also Arla. Arla is a tree the first 3 years. It's even Chal and Chutzlars, but the first 3 years you can't have any, you're not allowed to eat the fruits. So the 4th year you got to bring to Shalim, right? And then the 5th year you're allowed to eat it. But you're not allowed to have enough from the fruits at all. In cases where you don't know, they go basarov and all that. There's all kinds of excuses. But okay, so Klayim and Arla are Asr Ba'ana, and since it's Asr Ba'ana, so they double it. The rabbi said it's only bottle one part in 200. Not on 100, but in 100. But all this is Rabbanan, it's learned out. But Mirat Torah, it's bottle barov. So the Gemara asks a basic question, Vinavatla Baruba. What's the problem over here? I have a shor niskal, or a shor, a chatas that's supposed to die. And it got mixed up with other kachim, or it got mixed up with my own herd, right? My own flock. I'm a farmer. I got a lot of animals that got mixed up. So I got to destroy them all because you can't have enough of those things, right? In other words, Isura Bana is also B'Kol. The Mishnah in Tamur that we quoted yesterday, so he calls from the Gab Mizbeach, also B'Kol. Okay, that was the Gemara said that's the Gab Mizbeach. How do I know? They were talking about things that are not also Bana, like a rova near, you can't use on Mizbeach, Kol Shein. But our Mishnah is telling you anything that's also Bana, you can't have it. Why? Why isn't it bottle brov? Rashi quotes the pasuk. So here we get into the whole idea of things that are not bottle because they have some importance. So, for example, we say that davar shebaminyan, something which is normally counted, like today. Let's give an example. What's counted? Eggs, right? What do you say with eggs? Eggs are always sold by the dozen. Does anybody sell eggs by weight or by volume? No. So something that's counted, davar shebaminyan is not bottle. So therefore, let's say I had a non-kosher egg, although there's ways to tell which is kosher. But if you can't tell, they got mixed up. Mixed up means you can't tell the difference. Mixed up doesn't mean if I have a shor niskal over here and he's got a plumba on it or a Brandon, I know it's a shor niskal, and he's running around with my other, I know which one it is. We're talking about when it's mixed up and you can't tell. As we said in the Mishnah, at the end of the Mishnah, the only two that you can never get mixed up are a regular chatos, which is a female, and an asham, which is always a male. But other ones can get mixed up. Okay, so here we're talking about when you can't tell the difference. So we say, why isn't it bottle barov? V'chitem, says the Gemara, chashivi v'labatli. No, they are important. These are significant. They're significant. Now the Gemara, the Mefarshim will ask, what do you mean? Even a piece of meat that you put on somebody's plate is considered not bottle, but the Gemara is going to deal with this. It says, v'chitem chashivi v'labatli, it's not bottle. In other words, because these are animals. It's a whole animal. It's not bottle. Maybe that's why it's not bottle. We have a called davar shebaminyan. If it's counted, that's not bottle. In other words, not bottle barov, and even 1,000, it's not bottle because something that's counted is significant. But the question over here is this: there's a machlokas when we say davar shebaminyan lo bottle. Does it mean whatever is counted? Sometimes people sell things, they count it. Sometimes there are many items which are sold by the number, and sometimes they're sold by the weight or by the volume. Okay, well, in the case of a herd, in case of an animal, some people sell them individually. How many I got 14, I'm selling you 14 steer, 14 oxes, whatever. I'm selling you 14. Sometimes they're sold by the whole herd. I'm getting whatever I have in there. I'm not mocked, but how many there are. So there are items which are, I'm just giving an example with eggs because eggs comes to mind. I don't think anybody sells eggs by weight. I think it always goes by number, right? That's just an example, assuming that, so if you say kol shedar limnos, whatever is counted, sometimes it's weighed or measured, right? Or measured, either weight or measure or volume, whatever. So if you say anything which is counted sometimes, okay, so that's considered chashuv, and therefore, so if you say anything which is counted anything which is counted is asur, and anything which is counted is not bottle. So over here, so anything which is counted, anything sometimes it's counted, some not counted. So you could say, fine, this is not always counted, right? This is sometimes counted, this sometimes not counted. Elamandam or eshadar kolimnos shaninu. Then we say only thing which is definitely counted, right? Michael and Maimer. So what are we going to say? So Rashi explains like this. Take a look at Rashi, right where the lines get narrow. Kol shadar kolimnos sheish me adama makbidim minyanam der makbid umochrin b'minyanam shaninu. The low butli, those things are not bottle. We're going to see that in the Mishnah. The Gemara is going to say that at the bottom of the page. Shapir. Why? In other words, we're saying over here, why isn't the animal bottle? Why isn't bottle baroque? Do you know why? You know why? Because sometimes people sell these by the unit, by the individual animal. Sometimes anything which is sometimes counted, even if it's not always counted. But some people sell it counting, some people weigh it or measure it or sell the whole herd. Okay, so that's the reason why the animal's not bottle over here. Why? Because this is also sometimes counted. The shore is sometimes sold by the individual, sometimes sold by the whole herd. Okay, and therefore it's chashiv, and therefore it's not bottle. Elamandomer eshedarko liminos shaninu, says the Gemara, but the one who holds no. And Rashi explains what it means. Like eggs. Eggs are, I'm just assuming eggs. If you think of another example of things which are always sold by the unit, even, I don't know, even God forbid slaves. If they sold slaves, they sold a whole shipload. I don't know if they sold them individual. Eggs, I just think of because eggs are always sold by the dozen or by the, whatever. But if they're sold by the units, number of units. If you hold it what? The when do we say davar shebeminus lo bottle? Only if it's only sold by the unit. Something which is only sold by the unit, that's never bottle, because that has chashivas, it's significant. So over here, right, that only if it's only sold that way, well, animals aren't only sold by the unit, sometimes they're sold by the whole herd, and therefore it should be bottle. You see, if you say that davar sheminyan lo bottle is only if it's only sold by the unit. But if it's sold sometimes by the unit and sometimes by the whole herd or the whole whatever you call it, the whole bunch, the whole warehouse or whatever, the whole truckload, then over here, then it should be bottle. Because when do we say davar shemin bottle? Only if it's only sold eggs. Eggs are never bottle because it's only sold by the unit. But animals are sometimes sold by the unit, sometimes sold by the herd. Michael,
the example we always give of the steaks.
Of the what? Of the units?
Of the steaks. Sometimes it's sold by the unit and sometimes it's sold by the weight.
What, a steak? You mean? I understand.
Example we always give.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You find them in the street. According to this, then, they would be.
What do you find in the street? What's the
3 steaks.
Yeah.
And we know that one is from a kosher butcher.
Oh, okay. Neat. Yeah. I also wasn't sure if he said state or steaks or states. Got to adjust that hearing aid. Okay. All right. Steak, meat. Yeah. Right. So that's an example. Right.
According to this.
Yeah, right. So according to that, so that would not be a davar shebeminyan. If you say that the only thing that's davar shebeminyan is something which is only sold by the amount, by the unit. This is not something that's sold by the unit. In other words, when is it never bottled, davar sheminyan lo bottle? Only if it's only sold by the unit. But if it's sold sometimes by the weight or the measure or the volume or whatever, and sometimes on this side, then it should be bottled. So that's like kasha over here. When do we say davar sheminyan is not bottled? Only when? If it's only sold that way. Well, these animals are not sold that way, so let it be bottled. Ditnan, where do we find this? A person who had bundles of fenugreek. It's a kind of a spice, right? Shoklai Karen, but got mixed up and with wine, whatever, in a vineyard, and now you have here's a Shoklai Karen, and now that's got to be totally destroyed. What do you do with Klai Karen? You can't have enough from it. You have to destroy it. Okay. Rashi says min tavlin v'chashuv v'nein. Why is it more chashuv that even the bark or the stem tastes like the fruit? And Rashi says, fenugreek, whatever. So you had this thing has to be destroyed. So it says yidolku or yidlaku. You have to burn it. You have to destroy it. Rashi explains because what's the rule of klai kerem? By klai kerem it says pen tukdash hamalaya. Tukdash means let it be forbidden or forfeited. You have to give it up. You can't have enough from it. And the darshan tukad eish. It's got to be burnt. There's only one solution for klai. You got to burn it. You got to get rid of it. Okay. Nisavru b'acher. Let's say it get mixed up with other fenugreek. bundles. You can't tell the difference, right? They all look alike, right? He takes out Vacher, most take out Vacher, doesn't have to get mixed up with them. Cooling Dalku Rav Meir says they all have to be burnt. They all have to be destroyed, right? Cooling Dalku. That's what he says because it's Asher Bahana. Okay, we're going to explain. V'cham omrim, no. V'cham omrim, Yalu be'echad u'masayim. V'cham say, listen, the rule of climb that I explained before is what? Since climb is Asher Bahana. Truma is learned out 1 of 100 because from Trumas Meiser, which is 1 out of 100. Trumas Meiser, the Truma you give, that the Levi gives to the coin from the Meiser, is 1 out of 100. But Truma is mutter ba'ana, you just can't eat it if you're not a coin. And since Arla and Klayim or Asher Ba'ana, they're only batal 1 in 200. So Rav Meir says they're all Asher. Div Rav Meir. Meir says, this is Asher no matter what. You mix it up with the other ones, no matter what, they have to burn the whole batch has to be burned. The Chum say no. If it's 1 in 200, it's batal. Now you're not allowed to be batal on purpose. Obviously, the Savar B'chem means it became batal. If you had 1 part of this Klayim mixed up with 200 parts or 200 parts of other fenugreek, then it's batal. It's nullified. It's neutralized. Shiur Rav Meir Omer, because Rav Meir used to say, and here's the question: what the girsa is? Kol shedarko limnos mekadesh. Anything which sometimes, now kol shedarko means whatever is counted. Sometimes it's counted, sometimes it's measured. Let's say, right? But it's you have to destroy it. Mekadesh means it's forbidden. It's sanctified in the sense that you have to destroy it. You forfeit it. Okay, that's what Rav Meir says. But we're going to see in a minute. There's a machlokes in Rav Meir. Does he say kol shedarko limnos or es shedarko limnos? Right? Kol shedarko means even if some people count it and some people don't count it, right? Some people count it and some people don't count it. It's not batal. It's not batal. If you say es shedarko limnos, only if it's only counted that way. So at this point, Rav Meir says kol shedarko limnos mekadesh, but if you still get the shita, the Gimel says es shedarko limnos, right? Es shedarko limnos. We'll see. That's the machlokus we're going to come in a minute. But before we get to Rav Meir, to explain Rav Meir, the Gemara gives the Chacham shita. The Chacham say no. When we say that things that are important are not batal, right? The Chacham say it's batal in 200 like other Klayim. Chacham say the only things that are not batal, right? The only things that are not batal, again, Mekadesh means not that it's sanctified in the holy sense, but it's sanctified in the sense you can't have enough from it. It's forbidden to you. So there are 6 things which are very chashiv, and Rabbi Kiva Omer Shiva. Rabbi Kiva adds on a 7th one. What are the 6 things that are so chashiv that they're not batal, no matter what the number is? Egoze perach, the nuts from Parach, that place, some fancy nuts from that location. Rimone Badan, or pomegranates from that place. Badan is a place. Vachavios tumas, or sealed barrels of wine. Every barrel of wine is chashiv. It's sealed. It's very significant, and it's not batal. Or chilfei tardan, the tops of beetroots, or kilchei kruv, or cabbage stalks, or delas yavonis, or Grecian gourds. These 6 things are very chashiv, and they're not batal, because they're very chashiv. Other things are batal. He said, Chacham said that if the Klayim is 1 in 200, it's nullified, and you could have enough from it. You could eat it. Rabbi Kiva says Rabbi Kiva added a 7th thing. Afkikor shabal abayis, homemade breads, homemade loaves of bread. They're also chashiv. They're homemade. They're not like made in bulk where they all look alike. They're all individual. So he says those things. Now, of those things that are not batal, some grow on trees. Haroila, arla, haroila, klai Some of those things grow on trees. Arla is only on trees. You have an apple tree, an orange tree. Things grow on trees is arla. Things that grow in the ground like vegetation or vineyard vines. If it's right for klai kerem, it's klai kerem. In other words, whatever the yisur is, some of the things mentioned grow on trees. They grow on trees. It's also because of arla. If they grow in the ground like grains or like wine, then it's also because of climb. Okay, that's the Rabbanan Shita. Okay, the Rabbanan Shita is that it's batal because the only 6 or 7 things, according to Rabbi Kiva, there's only 6 or 7 things that are not batal. Those are very chashiv. Everything else is batal in whatever the measure is, either batal b'shishim, batal in 100, batal in 200 if it's klayim or arla. Vitmar Allah, and on this we said about Rav Meir, Rabbi Yochanan Amar eshedak l'nashaninu. When Rabbi Yochanan said that you have to destroy them all, he says, why? Because this is something which is always sold by the unit. In other words, these bundles of fenugreek are always sold by the unit, never sold by the weight. They're always sold like in bunches. You tie them together. Oh, so because it's always sold that way, therefore it has chashivas and it's not batel. And no matter what, 1 in 10,000, 1 in a million, it's not batel, and you have to destroy it all. You have climb here. That's Rish Lakish. Omer, Kol Shadak Nashnininu. No, we're not talking about something which is only counted. Sometimes it's counted. Kol Shadak means whatever is counted. Whatever is counted. Sometimes it's counted. Sometimes it's measured or weighed. Okay, that also is not batel, even if it's not batel. So Hanichal Rish Lakish. According to Rish Lakish, who said what? Even something which is not always counted. Some people, it depends on the person. This wholesaler sells it by the unit, another wholesaler sells it by the measure, by the weight. So Hanichal Rish Lakish, according to Rish Lakish, who says Kol Shadar Linas Shaninu, then we say Davar Shebeminyan Lo Batel means something which is some people counted. Some people sent it by the steaks. You want to take the steak? Some people sell it by the unit. Some people sell it by the weight. Okay, but as long as some people sell it by the unit, that's a davar shebeminyan and not batel. So according to Rish, this is our kasha. Our kasha we started on office. Why isn't the shor nisko? Let's say why isn't it batel barov? So according to Rish Lakish, who learns in Rav Meir, what did he say in Rav Meir? That Rav Meir says by the klai kerem they got mixed up with other bundles of fenugreek. It's never batel. You got to destroy them all. Why? Because sometimes it's sold by the unit. Even if it's sold, sometimes sold by the unit, sometimes sold by the weight. If sometimes sold by the unit, it's not batel, and therefore you can understand our Mishnah. That's why the shor nisko is not batel barov, because sometimes it's sold by the unit. Hanichla Rish Lakish, El Rabbi Yochanan Ma'ik Lemeber. But according to Rabbi Yochanan, what are you going to say? According to Rabbi Yochanan, who said what? Es shadarko limno shaninu. When do you say davar shebeminyan is not batel? It's not batel. Only if it's only sold that way. Okay, fine. So Rav Meir was talking about the fenugreek. He says it's only sold that way. But in our case, by the shor niskol or the chatos amesa, whatever the yisar noah is, sometimes it's sold by the unit, sometimes it's sold by the weight. So if that's the case, right? El Rav Yochanan says so it's not a davar shebeminyan. When a davar shebeminyan batel? Only if it's only sold that way. This is not only sold that way. Why isn't it batel? Amra Papa, you're right. It's a good kasha. But Hai Tana the litra ktsiosu. The Tana of our Mishnah, he holds that like Rish Lakish, basically like Rish Lakish, but even more so, as we'll see. Anything which is counted sometimes. Some people count it, some people weigh it. And this is the Tana of the case we're going to see tomorrow is the case of a dried figs. Now, dried figs, what do they do with the dried figs? They press them into a form of some sort, some sort of a mold. As we'll see, usually in a round, they make like round a fig cake, we call that. So high tana the litrixios, the tana of litrixios, the tana of the dried figs sold by the weight. A litra is a measure of weight. Who the Amar, he said, kol davar sheyeshbo minyan, anything which is counted at all. Kol shedak linos klal. Some people count it. Gugon Rashi says litros shel ksios, like let's say we'll call that kilos of dried figs. Sharo b'nei adam ein mochim b'minyan. Most people don't sell it by the count. Ela dorson oso be'igel. They press them into a round shape. Umocher kol ha'igel yachad. They sell the whole thing as one big unit. They're not selling by individual figs. So whole but igel yachad. Whole pom shemonin atros levad lemochim. Sometimes though they do count by individual ones. They count how many there are. Or let's say they count by how many fig cakes we have over here, right? Some people sell them by weight. Sometimes they count individual measures or weights of them, individuals, not by the fig cake, by the individual figs or how many figs are in there or by weight, whatever. Called over sheish bo minyan, anything that's sometimes counted. Afilu b'Rabbanan, even by Rabbanan. Now, why is it Rabbanan? Because figs are not chayiv in Trumas Amaisis Midaraisa, right? As we said, only the 5 deganim and wine and oil. Figs aren't chayiv Midrabbanan. Like today, we take Trumas Amaisis on fruits. That's all Rabbanan. So he says, Kol Davar Shabmin, Afilu b'Rabbanan is not batel because it's Davar Shabmin. But Kol Shkem b'Daraisa, and certainly by Daraisa. Here we're talking about a Daraisa when it's Asr b'Hanoah min Torah. right? It's also b'namin Torah, and therefore it's not bottle at all. So basically, he's saying like Rish Lakish that it's called over sheish b'minyan, even Rabbanan. It's usher. Not called Rish Rami. I feel Rabbanan is not bottle. It's never nullified, and that's why you have to destroy all the Klayim over here, the fenugreek Klayim, and the Tan of our Mishnah also goes like that for Koshkim Raisa. Now tomorrow's Gemara we'll discuss this Brisa. The Tanya Litrik Tzios. What happened Litrik Tzios Shados Apigal and you got mixed up with other ones. So we'll see the case tomorrow, Mitzvah Hashem. But before we even see the case, skip down to the bottom of Ayin Gimel Amar Aleph, this page that we're on now. Rav Ashi Omar. So one answer is okay. We're going like the Tana of this Mishnah. Who holds anything which is counted. Basically, it's like Rish Lakish, right? They call them anything. Sometimes it's counted, sometimes not counted. It's not bottle, and that's why you give the answer of Shor Niskol or Chatos Amesis. Rav Ashi, 4 lines from down on the page, just to see the other answer. Rav Ashi Omer, Afil Drawabonim. That's you want to say it goes like that individual Tana. That's a little bit of a dochik to say our Mishnah goes like that Tana. I'll say it goes like Rabbanim who disagree. And say that what? That if it's called over Shemini, certainly by Rabbanan, even by Isra Rabbanan, the Rabbanan wouldn't agree, but they disagree with the Tan of Litra the Ksios, and they say Bal Chaim Chashivi V'lo Batli. Very simple. The reason you're asking in our Mishnah, a Bal Chai, an animal that's alive, is not batal no matter what. So it's another thing which we say is not batal. We say Min B'mino is not batal, something which is a strong taste, something which is a hecker, not batal. We say, various reasons why things aren't batal. Here's another one. A Bal Chai is not batal. Even if it's sold as a whole herd, but you can't say, but this one, if you know that this particular one is Asr Ba'ano because it's Shor Nisko or it's Chatas Amesa, Bal Chaim are never batal. That's the question. So the Gemara is going to discuss this in more detail tomorrow. First of all, tomorrow we'll see the Mishnah about Litra Katsiyas, Shadar Salpia Eagle. What's that idea that something which is sometimes counted, sometimes weighed and sometimes counted, also is not batal? But even if you don't say that, and you go like Rabbanan, Filtim Rabbanan, Bal Chaim Chasher is not batal. But the question is fine. But if you take this, Gemara is going to then say, fine, but take this animal, and why don't you say, in other words, when you have the whole bunch, the Gemara is going to say, okay, you have all these animals mixed up. You have a Sharniska mixed up with other animals. So take one out of the animals, take one out, and say, call the Parsh Meruba Parsh. It's from the Rove. Why don't you say that? The Gemara is going to, that discussion will take place tomorrow, Mitzvah Shem. Have a good day, everybody. Stay dry.
Yeah.
Kultiv.
Cultive thinking.